Hi, welcome to another video from the Barrett channel. I'm at a park, Dayuan Park. It's pretty close to my house, and it's such a lovely park. See, there's a nice big lake here that you can have a walk around. So as I'm talking to you today, I'll have a stroll round the path. Okay, so just before I start the video, as always, a big thank you to everybody who supports us on Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. That's great. It helps us, keep the channel financed and to bring you these videos. So today, the subject of the video is Chinese politicians and how I believe they differ from Western politicians. And now personally, I think the Chinese system of politicians is probably better than Western politicians. So what do I mean? Well, in China, the top politicians who sort of run the country, they're all people who've had a lot of experience. So this experience comes from when they first start out in politics. They probably get to look after quite a small area, an area within a province, within a city. And then over time, they gain experience and they move up a level. And then they will stay in that position a number of years. And again, they will move up another level. So then they're probably the sort of in charge of running a province, and they will keep this role for some time, and then ultimately they will end up being promoted to a higher government, where they become a part of central government. So at the time they arrive in central government, they have many years of experience under their belt. And I think they are much more, qualified and experienced to make bigger decisions and run the country. If you contrast that with Western politicians, there are many Western politicians who have little or no experience at all of running things. And often it's the politician who either has the most charisma and or who has a lot of money at election time. I think in Western countries, elections are sort of won and lost on the amount of money that politicians throw at an election campaign. In the West, they write manifestos. It's like a pledge of what they're going to do when they get elected. But in reality, those things are never actually put into effect. Many governments write manifestos that kind of never materialize once they're elected. But the politicians themselves, many of those politicians, they don't really have that much experience of running things. Certainly in the UK, we have many politicians that have never actually done a real proper job. They are kind of career politicians. They don't have a lot of experience of running things. And in fact, many can get to Prime Minister and they really don't have any experience of running anything. And that's really very, very different to China. What I also think is that you look at a lot of the Chinese politicians and they are engineers, they are scientists, and I think that is a massive reason why China Sea building infrastructure, investing in technology is such a big thing, because their politicians are right behind that. Anything that you want to implement, if the leadership comes from the top, then things tend to get done. Whereas I think in Western politics, that's really not the case. We have very few people in Western politics who are engineers or scientists, or, like I said earlier, have actually had any experience in running anything at all. And I think what you also have to realize is that politicians in China are probably, much more experienced simply because the amount of things they have to, the large scale they have to manage. I think it's a very different scenario running a country with 1.4 billion people compared to running a country that only has, tens of millions or hundreds of millions, like, the UK population, 60 odd million, the American population around 300 million. So I think it's a very different ball game running a country with 1.4 billion people. Now, the Chinese system does have its pitfalls because they work on this sort of promoting people from sort of smaller districts up through provinces into central government. The pitfall of this is that a lot of the promotion is based on performance, and generally performance is measured by figures, how good a province is doing, how well that leader has made that province. Now this manifests itself with problems in the case that sometimes these figures are falsified to make them look better and get better prospects of promotion. But I think the central government are aware of this, and also another issue within local government in China is corruption. Now, the people of China know about this corruption, but I think because right now that things are going well for them, the economy is doing well. I know that Western people suggest every year for about the last 10 years that the Chinese economy is about to collapse, but it never seems to. So maybe their figures, their analysis is not as good as they would like to think. But there is this corruption, and generally I know the new leader, Xi Jinping, or he's not that new, but he's been there a number of years now, but he's had a pretty big crackdown on corruption. And a lot of officials have been brought to task, they've been tried, and they've been imprisoned for that. So it is on the decrease. However, there is still a lot of corruption, I guess, in government in China. But I think because the people see that their life is getting better and better, they tend to sort of turn a blind eye to that. And actually, it will be interesting to see if living standards don't continue to increase, whether the general people will get more angry about that. But again, the corruption thing is certainly not something that's just happens here in China. There are a number of, I think corruption happens all over the world. But just to give an example, it's well known that, Italy, there's quite a lot of corruption in Italy. And in many countries of the world. So I think it's unfair if people say, oh, this corruption is, only happens in China, because certainly that's not the case. But anyway, back to politicians. I think the Chinese method of appointing politicians is far better than the Western method. And I think that the positives in the system in China of promotion of politicians far outweigh the negatives. Whereas I really feel in the West, certainly in the UK, we can get politicians that are really just are not that suited to the job simply because they don't have that much experience really. And one other thing I'd like to touch on, as far as I'm aware here, before major policies are made, I believe the government do consult with leaders of industry. I know people like Jack Ma from Alibaba and Pony Ma from Tencent and other leading industry figures meet on a maybe quarterly or monthly basis with sort of top government people, and they help forge policy. So unlike some, it's not the sort of the Chinese party dictating everything. They do engage with business and commerce, which again is a great thing. I feel that again is slightly different to the West, where I think actually I think here the government sort of is more controlling of the business, where in the West the businesses tend to control the government. You know, the governments in the West will always deny this, but there's a huge amount of lobbying goes on, and many billions of pounds and dollars spent on lobbying each year, and you know, those companies expect something for that money, and they often shape government policy to their own advantages. Okay, so as usual, I'd like to see the comments down below on this subject. That actually wraps up the video for today. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up because it helps us immensely. If you like the channel, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to know about new videos as soon as they're released, hit the bells. Once again, thank you to everybody for listening. We really appreciate it, and until next time, take care.